For almost a decade, the murder of a brilliant and promising university student was a complete mystery. It was a brutal crime scene with baffling clues. But the most chilling piece of evidence, by far, was a note the killer left behind. This is the story of the very long, winding road to justice for Faith Hedgepeth.
So this is the note. This is what was at the absolute heart of the mystery for so long. It was scrawled on a torn paper bag, left right near Faith's body. The message is just so aggressive, so personal. For 9 years, this was one of the only real, tangible clues left by a killer who seemed to have just vanished into thin air.
You know, this cryptic message, along with a couple key pieces of forensic evidence, was really all the police had to go on. It was like a puzzle that pointed in a bunch of different directions, but for nearly a decade, it led them absolutely nowhere.
Okay, so let's go all the way back to the beginning, back to the morning of that chilling discovery that kicked this whole thing off.
It's just before 11 in the morning, and Faith's roommate, Karina Rosario, gets back to their apartment. Faith isn't answering, so she goes into her bedroom, and she finds something absolutely horrific. Faith was dead, her body bloodied and partially wrapped in a quilt. A frantic 911 call was the first step in what would become this massive, years-long investigation.
The autopsy later confirmed just how brutal the attack was. Faith had died from severe blunt force trauma to her head, and the suspected murder weapon? It was found right there in the apartment, an empty rum bottle.
So, to try and figure out what happened, investigators had to piece together the last hours of Faith's life. But first, it's really important to know who she was, a person full of life and promise, not just a victim.
Faith was just a brilliant and incredibly driven student at UNC Chapel Hill. She was a member of the Holly-Wessaponi tribe, an honor student, and a prestigious Gates Millennium Scholar. I mean, she had these huge dreams of becoming a doctor or a teacher, and she was on track to be the very first person in her family to graduate from college. Her loss was just a profound blow, not just to her family, but to her entire community.
So this timeline here really maps out her final movements. After studying, Faith and her roommate Karina go out to a nightclub. They get back to their apartment around 3 a.m., which is when a neighbor heard some loud thuds. But the really critical moment comes at 4:25 a.m. when Karina leaves the apartment, thinking Faith is just asleep. This created this window of time when Faith was alone and totally vulnerable.
Now, the crime scene, as horrific as it was, did leave behind a trail of clues. But these pieces of evidence would both guide and totally frustrate investigators for years to come.
Okay, so here's the thing. Investigators had the killer's DNA. A male DNA profile was recovered right at the scene, which they considered their absolute smoking gun. They also found clear proof that Faith had fought her attacker fiercely. They had all this crucial evidence, but here's the frustrating part. They had no match for it in any database.
And then, there's this really chilling piece of evidence. A voicemail that was possibly a pocket dial from Faith's phone. An audio expert who enhanced it claimed he could hear voices saying, "I think she's dying," and "do it anyhow." Now, police believe the recording was probably just from the noisy nightclub earlier that night, but still, it added this whole other layer of mystery to the case. Early on, suspicion fell hard on the roommate's ex-boyfriend. He had a history of domestic violence and had reportedly threatened Faith before. He even sent this super cryptic text the night of the murder asking for forgiveness for what I am about to do. But when the police got his DNA, it was not a match to the crime scene sample. He was cleared, and the investigation was right back to square one.
So, with their primary suspect cleared, the case entered this long, agonizing period of uncertainty. Years started to pass, and Faith's family was just left with nothing but questions.
9 years. I mean, it's really hard to overstate just how long that is for a family that's waiting for justice, for a community living with an unsolved murder. For 9 whole years, the killer's DNA profile just sat in a database, a ghost waiting for a name.
The official investigation was intense, but it was also intensely secretive. A court order sealed all the records from the public, and police ended up testing DNA from over 750 people. But there was also a lot of public criticism. Some neighbors said police never even canvassed the area properly, and a local business owner with security cameras said police didn't ask for his footage until it had long been recorded over. Then in 2016, 4 years into the investigation, police turned to some really cutting-edge science. They used a technique called DNA phenotyping to create a composite image of the suspect, not from an eyewitness, but from the DNA itself. Pretty wild, right?
This technology actually predicted that the suspect was likely of mixed Latino and Native American ancestry. It even generated predictions for his skin tone, his hair color, and his eye color.
It was basically a digital wanted poster created entirely from genetic code. But even with this new face, it still didn't lead to an arrest.
And then, just when it seemed like the case might stay cold forever, everything changed. After 9 years of dead ends and high-tech efforts, the big break in the case came from something completely ordinary and totally unexpected.
Here's exactly how it went down. In August of 2021, a man named Miguel Salguero Olivares gets arrested for a DUI. As part of that routine arrest, they take a DNA sample. That sample gets run through the national database, and then, all of a sudden, after 9 years of total silence, there was a hit. The DNA from the DUI arrest was a direct match to the DNA from Faith Hedgepeth's murder scene.
And this evidence was absolutely undeniable. Salguero Oliveras' DNA was a direct match to the sample from the scene. And on top of that, his palm print matched one found on the rum bottle, the suspected murder weapon. After 9 long years, they finally had their man.
As the case started to develop, the charges against Salguero Olivares were amended. The addition of first-degree rape, sexual offense, and burglary painted an even darker picture of what the prosecution believes happened that night. So in the end, a mystery that haunted an entire community for 9 years, a case that used high-tech DNA imaging and thousands of hours of investigation, was solved by a routine traffic stop. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other cold cases are just sitting in a file cabinet somewhere, just one random database match away from finally getting justice?